Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to part 2 of this discussion on first-in-human studies. So continuing on from part 1, I'd invite 𝗀𝗏 to talk about, does the first-in-human study or early conceptual device need to be manufactured according to CGMP principles? I know she alluded to good clinical practice principles in the end of the previous video. Let's talk about CGMP moving forward.
So the answer is yes. You have to meet GMP and full traceability. In fact, I will even stick my neck out and say that you need to trace this device even more stringently than you would a regular device. I would recommend that you would serialize it. And part of the reason is because you are changing. Right, the whole idea, of course, in human, you have early prototype, and you have the ability to change rapidly, and to do that. Well, when you change, because you're not only changing, there's no more such thing as a what. You might, the first batch of patient might do device A, second batch of patient might do device B, and so you need to be able to trace what components change. So and that's the reason why I think I would go so far as to say, if you can, serialize it. It depends on the nature of the device, of course. Now, because the first-in-human study, by nature, is designed to allow rapid device updates, right?
Absolutely.
But that does not mean that the GMP and traceability is not required. You still need to trace the device all the way to the patient, so that you know what version was used on whom for subsequent analysis in case there's a failure, in case something worked really well and now you want to reproduce it. So which version of it, because sometimes you do not know which version worked until later, which worked better than others until later. And so you will need to, you'll be analyzing the results, say, for example, 3 months later. You need to find out, okay, what did I do on patient 3 and 4 that make it work so much better than patient 4 and 5, for example. And so that's why serializing at this stage is actually, this is what I usually recommend my clients to do, to serialize it for this reason.
So I want to delve into your experience a little bit now, and you've done numerous first-in-human studies. And they typically tend to be 10 to 15 patients. From your experience, and this may vary by technology type too, I realize that, but from your experience, typically how many device iterations do manufacturers roll into a 10-15 patient first-in-human study?
It is not unusual to have 2 or 3.
Okay.
If it is a strictly mechanical device, and sometimes they are just little bit change. Changes may not be as drastic. Maybe that it could be that they found that a certain, maybe the proximal end of the catheter, if it's a catheter, got awkward, and so they want to put an extension tube to make it more usable. And many times it is related to usability. Okay. Sometimes you see that the way the physician use is in a way that you never thought about. And then the engineers, so it is good to have the engineers doing the first-in-human study, because they get to observe what works and what doesn't work. And so now, if it is software, if it is an implantable IPG, for example, and the changes can be done with software, I think we see a lot more software version. Physical changes to a device is a lot harder than it would be a software. So for that reason, you will see if it has contained software, generally, you see a lot more versions floating around in the study.
Got it. Your point about involving engineers really resonates with me. That has been my experience in industry previously with the TAVR device. But getting back onto this topic, manufacturers, as you very well know, tend to get very stressed about the thought of risk management or design controls. What is the extent of design control that's required to fulfill regulatory and ethical obligations around a first-in-human study?
Well, I've touched on this topic earlier in the earlier video, but as part of starting the study, we must certify that the device needs design control, your design control, and really
no shortcuts there.
No shortcuts. Your shortcut is risk management.
Right.
You want to use your risk management, unlike what people think. In the first-in-human study, risk management is your friend. Risk management is what you use to customize the design control requirements for the first-in-human study. You can customize it because I said, well, this is clunky, but I'm having an engineer. My risk management mitigation is I am having an engineer monitor the device or set up the device so the user don't have to worry about setting it up. So that's part of the risk mitigation. That's an example, right? So really what you should do is you should use your risk management wisely and not be afraid of it. And risk management should be your friend in this case and not to be feared, right? You would use risk management to guide you in your testing and your design. What is the minimum amount of design you need so that the device is safe? This is more about safety than anything else. And then that will help you understand where you can cut corners safely without jeopardizing the safety of the patient in the study.
One last question. Again, this is a loaded question. So frequently, manufacturers want to conduct first-in-human studies outside the U.S., Eastern Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Central and or South America, and sometimes even Western Europe are target geographies. Sometimes it's due to the presence or absence of certain patient populations, presence or absence of certain KOLs, ease of enrollment, or the length of time it takes to get ethics committee or IRB and or accompanying government approvals. Any thoughts on some of the items that manufacturers need to take into careful consideration when pursuing these geographies from a data quality perspective?
Well, I have worked with so many startup CEOs. I always hear, which country gives me the shortest regulatory pathway?
Sure.
That's the main thing, when they decide where they want to go. In my opinion, the order of importance should be availability of the patient pool.
Absolutely.
How fast you can enroll? Well, so what if you have a short regulatory pathway if you don't have the patient pool that you need, right? You have to remember what is your objective of your first hearing. And this is to find out quickly if your concept works. And if the concept has no merit, you want to fail early and fast.
Right.
Now, to do that, you need a decent pool of patients to be able to figure that out. Okay? The second item that should be in that list should pass regulatory review, right? Because time is money for startup companies, especially it's their lifeblood. Clinical data is the startup company's lifeblood. The third item is the flexibility of the site. Remember what we talked about is that the people who develop this procedure is generally done, is usually by a physician, physician's idea, or was developed in conjunction, working closely with the physician. So you want a site that will allow outside physician to work and proctor them. If you work with a site that don't allow outside physician in there or won't listen to the doctor or the manufacturer how to do it because they think they know it all, that's not the right site. There are doctors who are really are not good listeners, because often the novel technology is the brainchild of the physician, right? So they are the one, and the sponsor and physician who developed this has spent hours and hours thinking about it. So they probably have thought through most of the 90% of scenario, if not 100%. So that physician now is your best trained physician and need to be able to proctor and work with the site. So find right PI. The site PI, you have a site PI who is overly anxious or nervous. and expect everything to run like clockwork the first time, when that's not the PI that you want for first in human study, that it won't work. That PI is better off for a pivotal study, right? You want a PI that can take any hiccups in stride and work with the sponsor to modify the procedure device as needed. Sometimes, while doing the implant, he may need to make a suggestion. Okay, if you come from the left side, you have a little bit more room to maneuver instead of coming from the original side where the recommended by the physician, right? Because that is kind of what the objective of the procedure is about. There are certain sites and certain doctors who are more suited for first-in-human study than others. So site selection is really important. Lastly, first-in-human study, as you say, usually happen outside of the U.S. Even though FDA tries to encourage sponsors to start doing it in the U.S. through the EFS program, right? But it's not just the FDA that is a barrier. It's the ethics, it's the IRB here too that is a barrier, and also physicians here very few physicians like to be the first person to use it. Latin America, Eastern Europe, I wouldn't say Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and maybe New Zealand. They have the fastest regulatory review cycle. But you have to keep in mind the travel and the time zone. So you want to make a trip productive, because it becomes very expensive. Because remember, you're not flying one person, you're flying maybe 3 or 4 person engineers to help manage the study, to help manage the device, right? So we're talking about 3 or 4 people, not only the cost of travel, but the cost of them not being in-house doing the design work that they're supposed to be doing. So you add up the cost and it becomes pretty costly. So distance matters. And so you want to work with a site that is willing to stack up patients for you. It's not always possible if you're working on an emergent type of therapy. That's not possible. But I would say probably 70% of devices and procedures are not emergent, and so they can be stacked up.
Okay. Great. Excellent. Qiu-Hua, thank you so much for sharing all these pearls of wisdom. The audience, I hope you found it useful. Please be sure to drop us a note or even come and talk to us if you're planning one of these first-in-human studies, and we can help. We have a wealth of information and a wealth of experience having been there and done it. Thank you very much, Qiu-Hua.